This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, this week we visited Fulfill, a nonprofit with the mission of alleviating hunger and building food security in Monmouth and Ocean counties. We spoke with Kim Guadagno, CEO of Fulfill and the former Lieutenant Governor, about the extraordinary work they're doing in these extraordinary times. Let's take a look. So Kim, we're here at Fulfill. We're right on the cusp of Thanksgiving, big time of year for you folks here. But I really wanted to focus on 2020 and coronavirus. How has that impacted both food insecurity and what you do here at Fulfill this year?
Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So we all know the state was shut down on March 13th. That's 243 days ago.
Yeah.
But who's counting? In the last 243 days, we've done 2.7 million more meals than we did same time last year.
For that time frame.
In that same, 243, you know how, a former Christie administration official, everything's about the numbers,
Absolutely.
right? 243 days, 2.7 million more meals in just the Jersey Shore than we did same time last year. So the lives of everyone in this building has changed. We've had to change how we do things, who does them, how safely we do them. And quite frankly, now that we're closer to our clients, those are the people that we serve that actually get the meals,
right.
We feel it a lot more than we used to. It used to be a big distribution, the food would go out to 300 different places and people would get the food. And look, it was a sad story, but we never got to get this close to them. Now we see them every day.
So is there a moment where you're like, hey, things are changing here, we have to be ready for it? Or does it just happen organically?
Oh no, it happened overnight.
Okay.
So because I went through Sandy, I was the Lieutenant Governor during Sandy.
I remember it well.
So emergencies are not new to me, but getting on the conference call with the 50 staff members we have here and asking them this question: how many of you lived through Sandy? Because I'm thinking, I don't know a lot about food. In March, I'd only been here 8 months. So I didn't know a lot about food. I didn't know much about emergency procedures when it came to specific food pantries. And so I got everybody on the phone and said, we're essential personnel. We have to come to work on Monday. How many of you went through Sandy? I was thinking I'd had some backup, right? Silence. And I said, no, really, how many of you?
Yeah.
Silence.
Right.
So I then said, well, buckle up, because we're about to feed whoever comes in the door. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
Wow.
And what's heartwarming about this is, as you sit in a warehouse and you realize, we're a little above minimum wage. We go from $14.50 an hour to $25 an hour in the warehouse area. They all came to work.
Right.
They all came to work that following Monday.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing.
Yeah.
It was heartwarming. It was uplifting. That part of the story.
Right. So the amount of meals, the extra amount of meals that you've done this year, is it all attributed to unemployment and closure of business? What has this been about?
Well, you don't. The one thing you don't do when you're distributing food by popping your trunk and delivering it to people is you don't ask a lot of questions.
Right.
In fact, we don't ask any questions. We just say, you need food, you can have food. It's not, it's shelf-stable food. It's like spaghetti in a can and macaroni and cheese, but it's food. What we think it was and what we think it still is, that 40 to 50% increase is the unemployed at the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
We rely, and I know this from the last job, we rely on hospitality. And when you shut down every single hospitality venue you can think of in March, and you lose virtually the entire season.
Right.
Most of our new clients are people that were laid off or have been unable to find a job since March 13th.
Yeah, it's sad, but I'm sure there's a level of appreciation you haven't felt yet before this.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I have a saying around here: if you don't cry once a day at this food bank, then you're fired because you have no heart.
Right.
And there's stories after stories. It's this time of year especially. It's tearful.
Yeah. I wanted to go over some numbers of what Fulfill does every year, even without the coronavirus. Okay. These are staggering. These are 1 out of every 10 people are hungry in Monmouth and Ocean counties, including 50,000 children.
That's pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic. And Fulfill on a typical year provides 12 million meals every year to these folks. So what do you think is the root cause of food insecurity in Monmouth and Ocean County and the rest of the state?
So since the pandemic, up 40%. So our numbers of children that are hungry are 70,000 or more.
Yeah.
Went from 110 down to 1 in 10 to 1 in 6. So what's the root cause? I'm still trying to figure that out. Right now, most of our clients, I would guess, are working poor, meaning they have jobs and they want to work. The people I've met over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, want to work. They don't want to come to the store and say, help me, but they do because of their families. So in Monmouth and Ocean County, it's working poor.
Right.
And when you lose one job, maybe you're working 3, you lose that one job, then you've lost all ability to keep up. Mm-hmm. And what Fulfill does is we fill the gap. So the idea is to help them get the resources they need in order to get back on their feet. So we do not just food, we do food stamps, we do utility help, we do financial help, we do Affordable Care Act, we get them signed up for insurance, anything that helps you stabilize your environment and get back up on your feet, especially now while the economy is working its way through this pandemic. And you know how, I don't need to tell you, and you and I have been through this many times over the last 10 years. This is going to take a while.
Yeah.
Even once we get a vaccine, even assuming we get the vaccine, this economy here, one that relies on the 3rd largest industry in New Jersey, is not coming back for years. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about the other services, but since you mentioned that, I'd like to follow up on that. It's one thing to be a food bank. It's another thing to do all these other steps that you mentioned, all these other services. How important is that?
Well, what's the point of being a food bank if it's like the definition of insanity? You just keep doing the same thing and you just keep giving handouts. If you don't give people hands up, then you're never going to get them out of the cycle. Our goal is to put ourselves out of business.
Right.
I had it's true. I had a board member come to me once and said, do you think we can really solve the issue of food insecurity in our lifetime? And I said, I don't know. But I do know we have an obligation to try. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that is to give people the services they need, the skills they need to get out of the cycle. And that's what we're looking to do. We had a culinary school that was open, giving people skills, especially in this area, that would allow them to live a very good life until COVID hit. Now, like everybody else, we're trying to reimagine that. So we are reaching out to other groups to provide food to other groups so that we can hire back some of our culinary students or some of those that have been laid off, giving them a wage so that they can become good members of the community.
Right. So as your role here as CEO, one of the big things is to cultivate donors and sponsors to support the mission. So what is your pitch? I know it's different probably for whatever you're asking for, but in general, what is your pitch and how is it received?
Well, Bob, I know what the NJBIA pitch was. It was always, I'm your representative in Trenton.
That's
if you want a well-respected voice sitting at the table, whether they're Democrats in control or Republicans in control, you got to have the NJBIA.
Right. Truer words have never been said.
And he didn't even pay me to say that. I thought, no. But here, it's the impact a dollar can have on the ability, basically, of a child to get through a crisis in their life. So we have a very active and robust child hunger and insecurity program. Either it's our backpack program where we sneak food into kids' backpacks on a Friday. So by Monday they have a full stomach. Most people don't know, in Monmouth and Ocean County, the kids that are hungry, they get government-funded breakfast, they get government-funded lunch, but what do they do on the weekends? What happens when Friday comes?
Right.
Well, we fill their backpacks with literally a freezer bag full of food, so that they have something to eat until they get to school on Monday. That helps them be better students all the way around.
Sure. Where do you give it to them? I'm a little
We
lost.
give it to the teachers.
Okay.
The teachers identify them.
Right.
We try to keep it as stigma-free as possible.
Yeah.
We do 1,000 meals, or 1,000 backpacks a week.
Wow.
A week, think about it, in Monmouth and Ocean County, and we have a waiting list.
Right.
So it's, to me, that's the most impactful. Help these kids get a leg up so that they can study, so that they can be successful, get the education they need to go to college if they want, or a tech school if they want, and then move on and survive and support themselves.
One of you mentioned that great program, but one of them you recently launched is, I guess, called the Benefits Bus.
Yeah.
Can you explain what this is?
So backing up a little bit, we had a team member pass away very early on.
Very sorry to hear that.
In March. She actually passed away. She got COVID in March, passed away in April of COVID. She was a social worker, short form, and she went out into the community to make sure people got food stamps or the services that they needed. We have a whole team of people that do that. But when COVID hit, and after Diana Tennant passed away, I said, not on my watch.
Yeah, right.
I'm not losing anybody else.
Sure.
So we had no way of getting people here, and no way of, once they got here, doing it in a safe way. So Feeding America, which is our mothership, who gives us a lot of grants, gave us a grant to buy a big old bus. And I mean, that bus is as big as any bus you could buy.
Yeah.
Somebody said it was a Forester Caravan for anybody that is a real
It's a Partridge
techie
Family
guy.
bus.
Yeah. So, and we renovated it. We put 3 offices in it that are COVID friendly, so that it's got the plastic, it's got the Corel, you can walk in one way and walk out another. It's got ventilation, it's got a safe place for my members to work, separate from their clients. And that bus now goes to people. So that bus goes to, this week I think it handled quite a number of prisoners that were released last week from prison without any services.
Yeah, right.
So we give them the services, we're signing them up for the services that they need, and they leave with a box of food at the same time. So we do that everywhere.
And so are they pre-arranged where the bus is going to be?
Yep, there's a calendar. They try to get pre-arranged appointments. If not, they can call, it's on our website, fulfillnj.org.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me put that plug in there.
I was going to do it at the end, but that's
Well,
all
we'll
right.
just keep saying it.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to say it 3 times.
Right, yeah.
I said NJBIA. That's 3 times.
It's an even trade-off.
But fulfillnj.org, and if any of your listeners, and I make this pitch to your businesses who hire people that are only paid a minimum wage,
Right.
this is the benefit for them. If I can get them stabilized food, stabilized insurance, stabilized utilities, then they are better employees.
Right.
And if you make under, basically, I'm simplifying this, but if you make minimum wage or below, then you are eligible for these benefits. And if you are a business owner who pays that, you should get in touch with us so we can get them those resources, and they're better employees because they come to work, because they have the food they need to come to work, and their families are provided for as much as one can. Their utilities aren't piling up and they're not stressed out.
Right.
So that would be my pitch to your listeners right now.
Go to
Help us out.
fulfill.org, everybody. Yeah, seriously, it's great. Before we wrap up today, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your previous life and if you miss it at all. I mean, this was an election year, not gubernatorial, but do you miss the fishbowl in any way, shape, or form?
No. Who wouldn't miss the fishbowl? So it was funny. We launched the benefits bus the week before the election because we didn't want to have it stepped on by the election. So here I was in front of a microphone outside of a bus a week before the election, and it was a throwback to another lifetime. But except this one, I get to help people. And as a public servant, I helped a lot of people, a lot of businesses, I hope, during my 8 years. You know, unemployment was at 10% when we walked in. It was down to 4% when we walked out. We do something very different here, but we help people. And service is what makes my day worthwhile. You know?
You know, I think I read, and I know we have to wrap this, but 96 cents of every dollar here goes directly to the services.
Straight back.
And it occurred to me that you're even reducing red tape here.
We cut through a lot of red tape in an emergency. People say, "Oh, you're going to flunk your audit."
Right.
I said, "Really? Who's we?" So they finally say, "Me." I said, "Well, if I flunk my audit, what's the headline?"
Right.
Guadagno fed hungry people.
Right.
I'll take that headline, and that's what I bring to the table here. Permission to do things during the emergency that people that aren't working here don't otherwise understand. If we flunk an audit because I haven't kept the right paperwork, because I'm not getting close enough to a client, just putting it in the back of his trunk, then the headline is Guadagno flunks an audit because she's feeding people.
Yeah.
Okay, make my day.
Yeah.
Or what's the remedy? This is what you learn working in charity.
Yeah.
What's the remedy? Oh, you're going to take food away from people during a pandemic?
Yeah, not a good idea.
Day.
Not a good idea.
That's all good.
Well, Kim Guadagno, CEO of Fulfill, the original LG, and the pride of Monmouth Beach. Thank you so much for being here, Kim.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right.
We enjoy it.
We'll be right back after this.
These days, it's anything but business as usual. That's why working together is more important than ever. AT&T is committed to keeping you connected so you can keep your patients cared for, your customers served, your students inspired, and your employees closer than ever. Our network is resilient. Our people are strong. Our job is to keep your business connected. It's what we've always done. It's what we'll always do.
During an emergency, a network becomes a critical line of communication, connecting first responders to technology and to each other. FirstNet is the only officially authorized wireless network built with and for first responders. It's highly secure, eliminates throttling, and cuts through the clutter of commercial traffic. It's the help you need to help the people who need you.
Welcome back to Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, we now turn our attention to the Future of Work Industry series conducted by Focus New Jersey. Actually, 3 reports that came out recently. And here to tell us all about them is Executive Director Nicole Sandelier. Nikki, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
So these 3 reports we're talking about are education, professional and business services, and trade, transportation, and utilities. These are all tongue twisters. Thank you for making them that way. But before we spend a few minutes on each, Nikki, please explain to our audience what the Future of Work Industry Series is and why Focus New Jersey is doing them.
So the Future of Work Industry Series studies is a study where we're trying to understand the changing dynamics in the industry, opportunities, challenges, and also skill sets for the future.
Okay.
There are 250 business leaders throughout the state that participated in these studies.
Right.
And our goal is to use this information to build the gap and to create relationships between business and academia, but also to ensure that the skill sets of the future are embedded into the curricula today.
Wow, so 250 respondents, basically.
Yes.
That's an amazing amount of feedback. So we'll start first with your education report. What are some of the challenges that are presenting itself to, at least for K-12 education?
Sure. So for K through 12 education, the ability to find a qualified workforce that is certified in English as a second language, or ESL, science, and math.
Wow.
In certain counties, there's also a challenge to find teachers who look like students. This is particularly in lower income school districts, as well as the ability to have technology and software platforms for all students in specific counties.
So Nikki, we're hearing so much about how much online instruction is actually taking away from the student experience, perhaps. what can we derive from this that's maybe a positive?
So the online at-home component of K through 12 education has really transformed because of the coronavirus pandemic. What makes this pandemic different from the pandemic in 1918 is that internet did not exist back then.
That's not true. I was there for that.
And so students today have the opportunity to be able to continue on with their education even though they're missing things like social settings with students their age.
Right. I wanted to turn towards the ideas that guide the future work for K through 12. What are some of the things that you found from all the respondents who gave you feedback?
So what experts told us is that school districts really need to stop teaching to standardized tests. Instead, there needs to be a focus on teaching students about career pathways and helping students find their passions. In turn, or as a result, students deciding to go to community college, a four-year institution, join the military, or even get a job or go to an apprenticeship program after graduation should all be considered successful placement of a student.
Right. Yeah, and I see some of the other things. Emphasize the importance of the arts and artistic endeavors in K through 12 education. Shift away from teaching towards standardized tests. And guide students to help them pick the next educational step that is right for them. So half of your education report dives deep into post-secondary. So what were some of the challenges you heard from in that field?
So in the post-secondary education space, there were a number of challenges. The first is an aging workforce. The second is a reduction in the number of students in New Jersey who are graduating from high school. Another...
That's amazing to me, by the way. I was really surprised to see that. I figured that's a pretty constant number every year.
It's starting to decline. Over the course of 10 years, that number has gotten ever so slightly smaller.
Wow, okay.
Another issue, and this is something that's an NJBIA staple to discuss, is the out-migration of students. So we have a large number of students who are deciding to go to college outside of state. And tied into that, which is both an opportunity and a challenge for this industry, is hybrid and online learning.
Okay, let's turn briefly to your professional and business services report. What were some of the overall findings you found in that world?
So overall for this industry, we found that small and medium-sized companies really weren't impacted by this surge in technology prior to the pandemic. But what this pandemic forced this industry to do was have a rapid adoption and implementation of technology, the Internet of Things.
Right. Yeah, some of the challenges I saw here were constantly changing software and new technologies. Maintaining privacy of confidential information. People don't think about that. This is a constant upkeep, right? And again, out-of-state companies that provide the same or similar services.
That was very interesting because what we're starting to hear is that geographical borders really no longer matter. You can get the same service from a company out in California. The time frame might be slightly different because we're on time difference. However, if it's cheaper, if you're getting a better service, there's nothing stopping you from working with that California company versus that New Jersey company.
And I guess another one of the challenges is professional business services. During the time of coronavirus, some of those services are the first thing to go for companies that are struggling. So in the professional and business services report, did anything surprise you?
Nothing took me by surprise, but there were some findings that I found particularly interesting. So to put some context around what I'm about to say, we originally did this study prior to the coronavirus pandemic. The thought of a global pandemic was nowhere in anybody's minds, and we were about to release this study the week that stay-at-home orders went into effect. And so what we ended up having to do was go back and re-talk to some of our businesses, all of our businesses, rather. And what we found was that in this specific industry, business and professional services, there's now a lot of talk about mergers and acquisitions. Because of this lack of geographical borders that now exists because of the world of technology that has just totally engulfed this industry, with the reduction of services as other businesses' bottom lines get tighter, their bottom line also gets tighter. And so what we're starting to see is a lot of talk about who's going to merge and who's going to acquire another business in order to become more competitive with the businesses that still remain post-pandemic.
Very interesting. And as I look at some of the ideas that came up for the professional business services to help improve the future of work, you have changed the societal misconception that a 4-year degree is needed to have a successful career, promote the notion that it takes time to develop an expertise, creating internships and apprenticeships, which I know you're big on.
Yes.
And also, I know this is a big point for you, promote the key role that certificate and credentials play in preparing workers for careers in this industry. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of these findings we've heard over and over again throughout our various industry studies. This idea of credentialing has become ever increasingly more important because of all the new softwares and technologies that are out there. Cybersecurity has become such a big issue.
Right.
Businesses are looking for individuals who are certified or credentialed in specific skill sets, such as cybersecurity, data analytics, big data, and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay. Lastly, let's turn to the Trade, Transportation, and Utilities report. What I got out of this is the future work in these industries are really impacted by technology and decarbonization. Decarbonization.
Yes.
Environment. True? Discuss?
Absolutely. So technology, like it has with every industry, has just drastically changed what this industry is doing and how it's going about its daily work.
Right.
Technology is helping to not only make this industry more sustainable, but also more efficient.
Right. What are some of the challenges you've found in these three, I want to call them sub-industries, but it's trade, transportation, and utilities?
So one of the challenges that this industry has is this idea of decarbonization. I'm not a scientist,
Right.
and so everything that I'm about to say comes from what our business leaders are telling us. But as greenhouse gases continue to increase in their emission rates throughout the world, these businesses are making a concerted effort in order to reduce their carbon footprint.
Okay.
And what they're trying to do is introduce alternative fuels and alternative energies to reduce their carbon footprint at a micro level to make a difference at the macro level.
Right. And all that stuff always sounds great, but nobody ever puts a price tag to it. It's expensive.
It's a huge investment, to say the least.
Yeah, right. And some of the other challenges that you found on this particular study, aging workforce.
Yes.
With a lack of young skilled labor.
Yes.
Maintaining the security and privacy of confidential and/or sensitive information, and the costly nature of New Jersey's business climate, which we know quite a bit about, and industry regulation.
Yes.
So it's got a pretty steep climb. What were some of the ideas to actually help in this industry that you found?
So there's a big focus on decarbonization and reducing emissions. And so to that tune, our business leaders suggested that we educate trade, transportation, and utility workers on how to reduce and/or eliminate emissions in the future.
All right, and so before we can wind up here, Focus New Jersey, I should let folks know, is NJBIA's independent research foundation, and people can find these reports at focusnj.org. And there were some earlier reports that actually came out prior to the advent of this television show. Construction, health services, information technology, and manufacturing, all at focusnj.org. And I would really encourage people to go to the website and check this out. What I love about these reports, Nikki, is it's not a billion charts and a whole lot of words. You can actually look at these and make some sense of it within one read.
So they were originally intended to be the billion charts and a whole lot of words. But when the pandemic hit, we wanted to still get this information out because what we found was that not only was it useful and beneficial, but a lot of the findings were right on point, except for that our business leaders were saying these technological changes and skill sets were going to happen within 10 to 15 years.
Right.
Well, March 7th came and the pandemic struck the nation and our state, and all of a sudden our businesses are incorporating changes they thought were going to take 10 years in the matter of weeks and days. Right. So we adjusted the format of the study and just got the most important information out there.
Well, for my purposes, thank God, because I love this. I love the format, the way you have it.
Thank you.
And what's coming up next for future work by Focus NJ?
So we did have one study that we had to omit the findings from, and that was the leisure and hospitality industry.
Right.
That industry in particular was hit even harder than the rest of the industries that we've discussed today. And so we found that the findings really aren't applicable anymore. So what we're going to do instead in 2021, when all of the economic data is available to us, we are going to put out an economic impact analysis on that specific industry so that we can understand how coronavirus changed the outlook of that industry.
Great. Well, we definitely look forward to it. 2021?
2021.
All right. Well, Nicole Sandelier, thank you for all this. Come back when that new report comes out, and we'd love to have you back on.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob.
And thank you for joining NJBIA's Minding Your Business. We'll see you next time.